Good evening, everybody. We're going to start in a few minutes, so please be seated. I have a few slides to allow me to introduce Professor Kescskes. So it's an honor and a pleasure to introduce Professor Kescskes, a friend and a colleague. Kescskes is Professor of Linguistics and Communication at the State University of New York, Albany. His recent publications include numerous articles in addition to 5 books on various topics: foreign language and mother tongue, situation-bound utterances in L1 and L2, cognitive aspects of bilingualism, explorations in pragmatics, intention, common ground, and the egocentric speaker era. Well, he's also, as you well know, the founding editor of one of the best journals on language and culture, Intercultural Pragmatics, and the Mouton series in Pragmatics. And as we all know, he's also one of the organizers of this conference, for which I'm sure we're all very grateful. Today he will talk about interculturality and intercultural pragmatics.
Thank you very much. When I was asked to do this plenary, I was thinking about another topic first. I wanted to talk about another topic that I've been working on, why speakers say what they say the way they say. But then I decided to talk about intercultural pragmatics because it's a conference on intercultural pragmatics, and why don't I speak about interculturality? So this is what I'm going to do today. And I have quite an ambitious plan. So I have actually three things to talk about. First of all, I want to define how I understand what intercultural pragmatics is all about and what is its scope of inquiry. And then to introduce the socio-cognitive framework that gives the theoretical foundation of intercultural pragmatics. And then explain some main tenets of intercultural pragmatics within the socio-cognitive frame. I think I have time only for 2, interculturality and salience. Intercultural pragmatics is about how the language system is put to use in social encounters between human beings who have different first languages, communicate in a common language, and usually represent different cultures. The important thing here is that this communicative process is synergistic in the sense that in it existing pragmatic norms and emerging co-constructed features are present to a varying extent. The focus of research in intercultural pragmatics is as follows. So we have interaction between native speakers and non-native speakers, lingua franca communication in which none of the speakers has the same first language, multilingual discourse, and language use of individuals who speak more than one language. I'm especially interested in the second one. First of all, I would like to kind of clarify the use of these different terms that are out there in the literature: interlanguage pragmatics, cross-cultural pragmatics, intercultural pragmatics. So they are very often used interchangeably, but they do not refer to the same thing actually. So I think that we should kind of clarify the differences. So as far as interlanguage pragmatics is concerned, it focuses on the acquisition and use of pragmatic norms in the second language, how second language learners produce and comprehend speech acts, and how their pragmatic competence develops over time. And the important thing is that there have been a lot of studies done that focus on classroom, second language classroom research. So there is a particular connection between second language acquisition and interlanguage pragmatics. Cross-cultural pragmatics is a little bit different. So these studies mainly focus on speech act realization in different cultures, cultural breakdowns, pragmatic failures, politeness, impoliteness in different languages. And the common element in them is that there is a kind of comparative approach, comparative analysis of the cultural norms in different languages. Diana Boxer says that intercultural pragmatics takes the view that individuals from 2 societies and communities carry out their interactions, whether spoken or written, according to their own rules and norms, often resulting in a clash in expectations and ultimately misperceptions about the other group. As far as the theoretical basis of these two fields are concerned, they are based primarily on three theoretical constructs: the Gricean pragmatics, Brown and Levinson's politeness theory, and the so-called interlanguage hypothesis, Selinger 1972. Recently, attempts have been made to integrate relevance theory and conversation analysis into interlanguage theory or interlanguage pragmatics, and there are several publications that show this attempt. My problem is with interlanguage pragmatics and cross-cultural pragmatics is that both, at least as far as I'm concerned, they represent a kind of monolingual and cross-cultural rather than a multilingual and intercultural view, inasmuch as all of their theoretical resources advocate basically relative independence rather than interdependence of the linguistic systems and cultures, and proclaim some principles, some categories like cooperation and politeness as universal. As far as intercultural pragmatics is concerned, there is some difference here, and this difference is mainly due to two factors. One of them is the theoretical framework that intercultural pragmatics usually applies, and the other thing is how interculturality actually is understood. So let me just elaborate a little bit on the sociocultural approach as I understand it. First of all, if you look at what we have in present-day pragmatic theories, then we can say that we have cooperation, politeness, context dependency. So these are major issues. And if you look at the other side, in communication, we have speaker here egocentrism, we have linguistic aggression, we have untidy trial-error nature of communication. So I think that the other side also have to be addressed in one way or another if we want to have a clear picture of what actually is going on. So as far as the socio-cognitive approach is concerned, it doesn't deny the importance of cooperation, context, and politeness. But at the same time, it gives equal importance to speaker egocentrism, speaker here egocentrism, impoliteness, and untidy trial-error nature of the communicative process. The important thing is that if we look at the main tenets, let me just mention two of them. So the socio-cognitive approach emphasizes that interlocutors are not only constrained by societal conditions, but they actually shape these conditions. And it considers communication a process of the interplay of cooperation and egocentrism that are present in all phases of interaction to a varying extent. While cooperation is an intention-directed practice measured by relevance, egocentrism is an attention-oriented trait measured by salience. So it's an important thing that if we take the societal and the individual traits, then we see this thing that, as far as the individuals are concerned, we have individual egocentrism. I'm going to explain that later. And on the other side, cooperation as societal trait. And then we have attention like individual trait, and on the other side, intention as societal, and salience as individual, and relevance on the other side as societal. So as far as the societal factors are concerned, basically we have cooperation, intention, and relevance, and on the other side that I emphasize egocentrism and attention and salience. So all of them are important, and communication is basically the interplay of these traits. Let me just talk a little bit about this interplay of societal and cognitive factors here. So when we speak and write, basically we craft what we need to express to fit the situation and context in which we are communicating. And at the same time, the way people speak or write creates that very situation, context, social cultural frame in which this given communicative process occurs. So basically, two things happen here simultaneously. People try to fit their language to a situation or context that their language in turn had to create in the first place. James G. also writes about this very important issue, I think. The important thing here is that as far as people try to fit their language to a situation and context, that's a synchronic thing. So as far as the other side of the matter is concerned, that language in turn helped to create in the first place, that's a diachronical issue. So if we have, for example, a car rental situation, the question is this a car rental because participants are acting and speaking that way, or are they acting and speaking that way because this is a car rental? So acting and speaking in a particular way constitutes social situations, social cultural frames, and these frames generally require the use of a particular language. So which comes first doesn't seem to be relevant question synchronically. Of course, diachronically, it makes sense. Social constructivists emphasize, like Theo van Dijk emphasizes, that models and frames have to be rebuilt again and again, so it is just our impression that they exist outside language. As far as the socio-cognitive approach is concerned, that emphasizes that, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that there are ready-made frames in our mind, but certainly when we get the trigger from the linguistic expressions, these pieces of information are more available, accessible, and they, of course, come together. So after all, there is some kind of psychological reality in the individual of these particular models and forms that we have. Let me elaborate a little bit on cooperation and egocentrism. The guise in pragmatics is basically cooperation and intention. So Clark said that communication is considered an intention-directed practice during which the interlocutors mutually recognize their intentions and goals and make joint efforts to achieve them. So what is the difference in this socio-cognitive approach? It emphasizes that, of course, we are cooperative, so we try to cooperate with our partners, but at the same time, of course, there is egocentrism there, which is rooted in our prior experience as individuals. And these are not necessarily two exclusive phenomena. And they are both present in all stages of communication to a different extent, of course, and they represent the individual and societal traits of this dynamic process. So here is an example. Roy and Susie are talking, so Roy says, "Is there something wrong, Susie?" Susie says, "I'm fine, Roy." Roy says, "I would have believed you if you hadn't said Roy." Okay, just stop. So it shows that, there is some kind of, if the lady says just, "I'm fine," there is no problem because that's the regular answer. But there is an indication that there's something is wrong, so, she adds the name of the guy and then right away it figures out that there is something wrong here. Actually, as far as cooperation